Welcome everybody to the 12 Days of Property Christmas, where we are interviewing some of the greatest property brains in the UK. Now, 2020 has been a fun year for us all. David and I were at a session at offices near Buckingham Palace last year, and we recorded with 5 property experts our forecasts, linked to the video above for last year's forecasts. But 2020 didn't quite go to plan, did it, David?
No, and all of our guests last year were very eminent ladies and gentlemen from the world of property. We all thought about it long and hard. We all gave our carefully considered views, and that week, right till the end of, right till the sort of right into about the first month of 2021, everything seemed to be playing out. And then, as we know, a little virus came along, and that tore up a lot of people's plans in a lot of different industries, including property.
So, those experts that were interviewed last year, you'll find them if you hit the subscribe button and hit the follow link and give a thumbs up. YouTube will alert you as and when we release each one of those experts' videos over the 12 days of Christmas. So stay tuned. But David, let's have a look at 2021. What does it look like for property investors?
Well, I think it's a mixture, isn't it, of opportunity and crisis, and the two always go in hand to hand. As you know, Andrew, a particular thing of mine is the property cycle, which I've studied for many years, and I was coming into my third, I guess, property cycle now, each one of which takes some 18 years. So I was feeling pretty complacent about everything, and felt that I really kind of understood the dynamic of it all, having gone through George Soros and all that kind of thing in about 1990, having gone through the credit crunch in 2007. And I thought, okay, it's all coming around again. And then what we've seen in 2020, and this obviously impacts 21, is we've seen something that normally takes 18 years compressed into about 9 months. And so that has thrown the spanner in the works for everybody, really. And it makes for a much more interesting dynamic, because we don't know at what point it'll all slow down again. And so at the moment it's been whiz bang wallop, and so we had a mini slump, if you like, in lockdown number 1, if I may call it that. Then we had a mini boom when everybody was able to sort of poke their heads above water. The announcement of the stamp duty thing was a bit mismanaged, I would venture, in that the market needed a bit of a boost in October, but by mentioning it in July, the only thing was to implement it in July. Otherwise, the market would have been flat for 3 months while everybody with a £500,000 house waited to sell. So this, in my view, meant that in October, when the shot in the arm was needed, it wasn't there. Now, moving into 2021, because obviously the government's reaction to COVID is a vital driver in moving this thing forward, we have a situation where at the end of March, the stamp duty so-called holiday, as things stand at the moment, ends, and then the train crashes into a brick wall. So the question is whether, things like furlough and other things to help people have been extended, whether the government will do something else, and I'm not sure they will, to be honest. But if they don't, then there are some solicitors already who are refusing to take on property stuff because they can't be sure of getting it across the line already. So I think as far as that's concerned, we're going to see maybe 200, 300, 400,000 transactions coming unstuck. With this looming deadline, whereby people just won't be prepared to pay the extra stamp.
Okay, so what we're effectively saying is there's a number of events next year which COVID is likely to be rolling on. Do you think things like quantitative easing and taxation, because we've got the taxation catch up, we've got the quantitative easing where the pound's effectively being devalued by writing new currency, do you think they'll have impacts on the UK economy, David?
I'm sorry to say that I think the impact will be massive, particularly this review of the capital gains tax, which because obviously when you've been effectively, I don't know, paying 80% of the wages for a big wodge of the country for what will have been about a year, somehow the books need to be balanced, and you need to get that money back. And CGT is an easy target. But what will that mean for property investors selling their properties? Well, it will mean possibly paying tax, and I believe you've got a video about this whole thing, Andrew.
We have got a video just up here on reducing and eliminating your tax bill legally.
Excellent. And a lot has been spoken about this double whammy in the proposals, which at the time of recording, we don't know how much of that will end up in the spring budget, but the proposals not only to increase CGT to your actual tax rate, but also not to rebase the purchase when someone is deceased, so that their inheritees, if that's the correct word, will have to pay CGT on the original purchase price of this thing, a generation ago as well. And so that really would hit the market really, really hard.
Okay, so we're looking at that, and we've not yet covered the B word. Brexit.
We haven't. And again, at the time of, I have to confess, this is a recording. We've done it like about 3 days before Christmas, and a lot can happen. As everybody knows, a week is a very long time in politics. So there's toing and froing, which may... Or
in fishing, David. It's an awfully long day in fishing.
So it would appear. So by the time this goes out, who knows? There may be gunboats going up and down and helicopters going up and down the channel. You never know. Blockades, all kinds of things, or not. And my personal view on this, okay, is that at 1 minute to midnight on the 31st of December, there'll be some kind of fudge which will go through just in the nick of time. But, it's anything could happen. But I think, in particular, on the English side, there's a fellow running the show who loves the old theatrics. And so I think we're going to see a flourish and bouquets of flowers and rabbits and things being pulled out at the 11th hour. Both sides will project, in the event of an agreement, both sides will present it as a major victory. And in the event it goes wrong, both sides will be playing the blame game. So one way or another, but we've had 4.5 years.
How's this going to impact upon property? Do you think it will? Because there's arguments about fishing, there's arguments about goods moving across the channel and blockading the channel. Do you think it'll have an effect? Because we can't move the house abroad and so forth. Is it an opportunity or a threat?
It's a very good point, Andrew, and it's a little of both, because it sort of depends what the post-Brexit Britain becomes. Will it become a sort of Isle of Man or something like this, or Switzerland? It could do, and hence that you can bet your bottom dollar that the EU is very worried about this, because that would present serious competition, which they might regard as unfair, in particular from our financial sector, if we're not sort of tied in anymore and we can cut loose, and if we can reduce corporation tax to some nominal thing and attack business in the way that currently a lot of small islands in the Pacific do, and other places. So that is a possibility. This thing kind of, if we go onto WTO rules, as opposed to some kind of link with the EU, it won't affect many sectors, because the tariffs are quite low. If you look at them, there are a few exceptions like the car industry and this kind of thing, but it probably will mean for most industries, they'll probably breathe a sigh of relief, because the whole swathe of bureaucracy will go. So there is that. We might have to switch to, I don't know, Bulgarian wines or something like that. And a lot of EU countries are kind of trying to do their own deals. I hear that in the southwest, that they're trying to change these rules as to how many days we can stay in any 180, so that we can spend that allowance when it's winter in the UK, for example, and not have to spend it in the summer there when it's plus 45. So there are kind of individual deals being struck as well, which and that is a particularly pertinent one, because it could mean all the British expats selling all their houses in Spain and Portugal or whatever, because what's the point of being able to go there in July and August when, frankly, you'd be much better off staying here. So even if there is some kind of deal, there'll be sub deals. And I think in any event, this is going to rumble on for a few years as we sort of find our feet. The fishery thing is a really big thing, because all these ports in northern France, their whole livelihood, it'd be a bit like the miners in the 1980s, their whole livelihood depends on being able to go out into the North Sea in waters that would then be off limits to them. They'll just be able to fish in, 3 miles of La Manche, where there probably isn't much of a catch. And so, that the impact of, and this puts Mr. Macron under a lot of pressure, because unlike here in the UK, where we sort of murmur a bit and write a letter to our MP, I mean, the farmers, well, the fishermen won't have tractors, but they'll be putting their fishing boats in the middle of the road, blockading, and everything will be, and the old gilet jaune and everything will be out, and it will be kind of anarchy. So I think from the French perspective, they need to convince their European partners that some kind of realistic deal should be struck. There would be a lot of EU workers not here anymore, and a lot of those, for us property investors, are tenants. But again, in the week of this recording, we heard that the government is going to triple the number of farm workers that are available, because a lot of our low-paid industries and so forth, I mean, all the support staff in the NHS don't meet this threshold of earnings. So it's quite ridiculous. We'll have hospitals that are overflowing with patients, particularly in view of all the stuff that's going on right now, and nobody to staff them. So we might find enormous batches of vaccine that have to be stored at -70, held up in customs. So there's a lot of things that might or might not happen. And the knock-on effect to the housing situation, I suppose, is that markets like stability, don't they?
They absolutely do. Now, we've looked at a lot of things like Brexit and COVID and stamp duty cliffs and quantitative easing and taxation, but we've not really talked about planning. And this year, they threw the baby out with the bathwater with the build, build, build strategy. I mean, there's a video link up here to the build, build, build strategy, but do you think planning is going to have any impact on the property sector next year and all the changes that are coming through? It's almost a tsunami.
I think it was a necessary tsunami, and I think it followed on from the tsunami of the little virusy football thing with spikes, because that changed people's behavior. I'm very much a Luddite, even though I'm a geeky tech person, but in terms of actually using the tech, which is different from, I can go under the bonnet and hack something and everything. In terms of using the tech, I've been very resistant to online banking, because I know that there are huge opportunities for fraud in that, from the whole banks of people in Russia and other countries are available that have just teams of people hacking into these systems. And a mate of mine is very high up in the computing division here at our local uni, and there are big holes.
So coming back to planning and
that
side of things, because we've gone off down a rabbit hole.
Apologies.
What do you think? Do you think the planning changes are going to have any impact on the property sector at all next year?
Yes, I think they have to. And sorry, the reason for the rabbit hole, which I'll reduce to one sentence now, is that COVID changed our behavior. It's 2 sentences. And this had a huge impact on the high street, so that our trips to the high street, half of those shops were closed. Remarkably and surprisingly, some of the big stores like Primark didn't even have an online presence, which was quite astonishing. And there were big winners, there were big losers, there were big name companies going to the wall that had been around for ages. There were small family businesses that had passed down for 3-4 generations going to the wall. There were in the hospitality sector, hotels and this kind of thing going to the wall, because our habits had changed. Hopefully we will come back and dine in restaurants and visit hotels and that kind of thing. It might be slow. In 1918, diverging a little bit as well, it took 3 or 4 years to come back from Spanish flu, which, to be fair, was a much more severe pandemic. But on the other hand, we're more snowflakey now, so we react to this one a lot more than they did to theirs. And so something had to be done about the high street to prevent it be just lines and lines and lines of boarded up shops and so forth. Something had to be done about offices to prevent it there being rows and rows and rows of boarded up offices as people work from home.
So what we're saying is the planning changes offer an opportunity to repurpose um, existing buildings that no longer have a use in the current marketplace.
Yes.
So let's summarize. Can we do, or could you summarize some thoughts on what the development marketplace, residential, commercial marketplaces might hold? Because you have a foot in all camps, you've done all areas. So what would you see as the opportunities for investors?
Well, there will be opportunities to repurpose nice commercial properties in city centres, and I believe you've had one that you've been working on recently. So the things that will be evergreen, that will always have some kind of demand, the barriers to doing that kind of stuff will just fall away by the wayside, because even when they're listed buildings or whatever, the authorities will know that absolutely. They will know that, you know, the alternative is for these two things to crumble away and dissolve, and for our inner cities to turn into some kind of zombie movie where they just have brushwood going along the road. And I saw at the time of this recording last night a film of Oxford Street in lockdown 4, and there was one guy in a high-vis jacket pushing a brush along, and that was it. And so, you know, that would be the future of all our city centres if something radical wasn't done. So for us as investors, if we can do imaginative projects that revitalise our community, and I think we have a social responsibility to do this, then I think there's a lot of scope both for serving society and for making good, healthy profits.
Brilliant. Well, David, it's been fantastic to get an update from you on where you think the market's going. What I'll do, I'll drop a link back up here again to the video that David and I recorded last year, or more to the point, David recorded last year and we shared on this channel. And you can compare and contrast just how 2020's forecast and 2021's forecast have changed significantly. Any words of wisdom and golden tips or nuggets that you'd like to share for where you see that little chink of light of an opportunity that only the smarter investor will get?
Well, yes, I think so. And by the way, I didn't actually talk about QE earlier, but I'll just quickly say that. I mean, I should have talked about it, but I started talking about some other rubbish. That when there's more money around, what is around has less value. Let's just leave it at that. And so downward, you know, the ugly spectre of inflation in the background at a time when interest rates are at an all-time low. But I'm sure that you'll talk about that with some of our other guests in a future video. But yes, nugget of looking forward, glimmer of hope is always have your property spreadsheets. And if you haven't got one, message into us and we'll probably knock you one up or something, or point you in the direction of one. Because if the numbers work, they work. And if the numbers don't, they don't. And that has to be the core deciding factor when investing in property. If you're looking at a project that's got an 18-month or 2-year time scale, be aware of the fact that we don't know what the world will look like in 18 months or 2 years. So I would say try and go for the sort of shorter time frame, if at all possible, given what's happened in the last 12.
I think I couldn't agree with you more on that. And I think that's some really brilliant, sage advice there from somebody who's been in the industry around 40 years, or dare I sort of even suggest that? I mean, you look younger than me, David.
You're very kind, Andrew. It's the vitamins.
It's the vitamins. It certainly is. And on that note, thank you very much for joining us today. Stay tuned, because over the coming days, we will have more experts sharing what they think is happening in 2021, where the opportunities are, and also, if you haven't already, follow this thread, which has multiple videos on. There will be 12 days of Christmas, so 12 interviews here for you to go and watch 12 different experts' opinions. Having interviewed them all, I can assure you they are all very, very different and come from different perspectives. Stay tuned. Thank you very much. hit that share, hit the like, drop David a comment. Tell me, do you agree with what we've said? Or is it a load of baloney? Goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.